I have a problem with authority. It's a nature and nurture thing. Okay, nature, because apparently when I was 3 years old, at one point I climbed on top of my family's coffee table and shouted at my parents at the top of my lungs, "I will not be enslaved by your commands! I am an independent woman!" At 3. And then when I was 5, my mother stoked the fire. Nurture. I'd come home from school and told her about a lesson that we had just had. And I kept saying, well, teacher said this, and teacher said this, and teacher said that. And she got this look on her face, and she looked at me and said, "But what do you think?" Teacher said, "I don't care what teacher said. Teacher is not God. What do you think?" So, I was born with a chip on my shoulder, and then my mom gave that chip a zip code. So yeah, I'm not so cool with someone else having power over me. I want the power, all of the power will be mine. I just like being in charge, and I'm small and adorable, so it usually works out. Like when I was 9, and I wasn't put on the elementary school newspaper, because I had passionately and loudly expressed to the teacher how much I wanted to do it. And she said she was only gonna let kids who were sitting nicely and quietly do it. And then she ran it with them, and I felt, no, I scratched that. I knew that it was being run very poorly. So I asked the teacher if I could be a part of it, please. And she said no, authoritatively. So I started a competing newspaper with a few other kids, and it was totally badass and way better than that other stupid newspaper, and our first issue featured an expose on the corruption crippling the other newspaper's leadership. I was suspended. It was worth it, and my mother approved. As time wore on, my need to point out to authority figures when they were being very wrong just grew. I had tasted the sweetness of badassery ice cream, and now I wanted it all the time. And this was around the time we had moved from Tel Aviv to Texas. However annoying my behavior was in Israel, you can only imagine how annoying it was in Texas. So there I was in junior high, and I nearly had a teacher fired. It was study hall. 2 girls were sitting behind me and speaking to each other in Spanish. I knew them because we had all taken ESL together. English second language. The teacher, our authority figure, came up to them and said, "If y'all don't stop speaking in Spanish, I'm gonna give you detention. This is America, y'all. We speak English here." I stood up. "Actually, Mrs. Green, the United States of America does not have an official language, and as a nation of immigrants, I feel," she cut me off and sent me to the principal's office for sassing. I told the principal what had happened and explained that I had no problem taking this all the way up to the Supreme Court if necessary. I was moved out of that classroom, and the teacher got in huge trouble with the superintendent. It was worth it. And my mother approved. And then there's high school. In my high school, we had to take government, like a civics class. But for a little nerdy overachiever like me, it was such a disappointment. What? No honors or AP option? I had to take class with the plebes? No! So, government class. We were a couple months into the year, and I think the teacher, Mr. Bobby Slovak, had already realized that I was a total pain in the ass. Unlike everyone else in my class, I actually cared about civics. I had been reading the newspaper since I was 8 years old and discussing it with my parents over breakfast. I scheduled and still schedule my life around when certain NPR programs are going to air. And since I was in debate class and head of the debate club, when we had to debate other students in class as part of the curriculum, I would just wipe the floor with them for fun. Anytime Mr. Slovak would bring up a new topic, I would raise my hand with exuberance and share with the class everything I knew about that topic. I was that girl. And anytime Mr. Slovak said something that I could argue with, which was often, I would raise my hand and point out to him everything that was wrong about what he had just said. I loved proving him wrong, not just because we didn't share political beliefs, but also because there was something incredibly delicious and the power about proving your teacher wrong. After all, teachers aren't gods, y'all. They're not. And then one day, Mr. Slovak announced that a candidate for state congress would be visiting our classroom, and my little brain burst with joy. I researched this man, a Mr. Fred Brown. I looked up his views. I went to his campaign office, a luxury car dealership in Bryan, Texas. And on the day he showed up in his slick, fancy man suit, I should mention that my dislike of authority is also linked to a strong dislike of men with lots of money. I am working on it. I come from a long line of socialist atheists, and when this man in his slick suit came in, every molecule in my body was like, no! He stood for everything I disliked. He was a good old boy, born into money, born into white privilege, born into entitlement. He never had to struggle for anything in his life. He said he was Christian, but he was the kind that doled out judgments on other people, like he was so high and mighty at his Volkswagen dealership. He didn't believe in welfare. He didn't believe in taxes. He didn't like immigrants. But he couldn't back up any of his reasoning. It was like he was a flesh bag of hot air. At least that's what I thought at the time. And you guys, I just Googled him last night. He hasn't changed. So there he was, the candidate, talking. He talked some more. Some of the students asked obvious softball questions. And Mr. Slovak was purposefully avoiding my gaze, avoiding my raised hand. I know why he was ignoring me. You know why he was ignoring me. I was the kid that would embarrass him and probably the whole school. I mean, every entitled white person in Texas knows better than to engage in a conversation with an opinionated immigrant with a vagina. Finally, Mr. Brown looked at me. And then he looked at Mr. Slovak, and then he looked back at me like, thinking, what could this tiny girl with terrible hair and huge glasses possibly do to make you so scared of calling on her? Up until this point, only Mr. Slovak had called on the students, but at this moment, Mr. Brown waved him off and called on me. Oh yes, the power was mine. Candidate Brown, I have a question with a follow-up question. Oh, all those years of debate club coming up to good use. Yes, young lady. Do you believe that states should uphold other states' laws? He didn't even hesitate. The trap had been set. Yes, ma'am. He turned to face another student, but I interrupted. May I please ask my follow-up question? Oh, sure. To give you guys context for this moment, this was the year that 2 landmark cases had just been decided. Gay marriage was now legal in 2 states. And in my family, we celebrated that. So, Mr. Brown, can Texas uphold all gay marriage then? Will you be passing that bill in the state legislature? He stammered. He turned bright red. He talked about marriage and man and woman and God and the Bible and. And Mr. Slovak quickly changed the subject and gave me the one finger, get over here gesture. I was not allowed to ask another question, let alone speak for the rest of the year. Brown lost the election. I am sure it had nothing to do with me, but it was worth it. And my mother approved.